So a very warm welcome here to Sunday morning at South by Southwest. We just had a remarkable breakfast session about sustainable fashion, and it's one of my very as a really important topic for me, because just like if you take food, this is something we all deal with every single day. Fashion, clothing, we deal with every single day. But what we realize is that we don't know too much about where our clothes come from. We don't really, we don't have those difficult conversations about our responsibilities, either as retailers, as designers, or as consumers, about clothing and fashion. So very touched by the breakfast session, and we're now going in to have an amazing panel with some amazing people about the whole topic. We have the future of conscious fashion. And you were all part of our panel, and I also know you got a little bit emotional about what the conversation is, so we probably do a little bit of reflections around this also. So before we get into the details about the different questions, so I'm looking at my phone for the questions to get them totally right. I want each of you to say a couple of words about yourself, and also like what was what triggered you, like, because this is a passion topic, I know, for the three of you, right? What triggered you to go in and, as strong as you do today, to drive the fashion agenda? Would you like to start?
Yeah, hi, good morning. So good to be here and talking about such an important topic. So $400 billion of apparel is sold in the United States alone. 98% of that apparel every year is sourced and manufactured overseas in very complex and opaque supply chains. And as innovators and as entrepreneurs, this is a huge problem and complexity that we want to solve to make it more sustainable and more transparent. And so I'm an entrepreneur. My company is called Sundar, and we operate at the intersection of digital, supply chains, apparel, and sustainability. And we're connecting the antiquated supply chain of fashion. We're building software that connects the creators of fashion in brands and retailers with manufacturers and suppliers to really drive transparency and sustainability. And you know, this is so important, and I'm so excited to be operating in the very unsexy part of the fashion industry, right? Supply chains, you know, in faraway countries that we don't see how things are made. So much innovation has happened at the customer experience level. So we go online, we purchase on-trend fashion. We're very demanding as customers. We need responsiveness. We want to be on trend. We're looking at social media. And yet, we buy something in seconds, but it still takes 52 weeks for that garment, that pair of shoes, to go from a sketch, from a concept to a finished product. And about 7 months of that cycle is spent in raw materials sourcing. And that's because it's just such a pen and paper and antiquated process, which makes it incredibly unsustainable and intransparent. And that's why we're excited to be solving these hard problems in unsexy businesses.
Thank you so much.
So I started my company out of a pure passion for shoes, and for beautiful shoes and comfortable shoes. But being an entrepreneur, for sure, I have also to watch the processes and see how consumers are behaving, but also what is the current technology used in the shoes and footwear industry. So for me, I saw that the retailers and the brands got used, or the consumer got used to that free of charge returns, and they can order whatever they want. And I thought this is something which is really not nice, not to the to me as a company selling shoes, but also to the environment. And it was not that I, by consciously wanted to do good in terms of our environment. I really wanted to do both. See what we can do on the retail side with technology and save here, the returns, which causes a lot of carbon emissions, as well as packaging and waste.
I'm the founder of the Conscious Fashion Campaign. The Conscious Fashion Campaign is an initiative looking to champion fashion designers that put impact at the forefront of their business, and specifically aligning and looking to drive the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. With that, we're looking to harness the power of retail media and influence to really shift the needle of the economic spend in the 2.4 trillion of the fashion industry and see what we can do to drive conscious consumerism. Going to your point about my background and why I started this and my passion that drives me, I come from a fashion event production and business development background, and I would find myself producing shows where we would be bringing in thousands of influential fashion industry folks, getting designers into magazines, into stores, and an investment. And it really dawned on me pretty early on that the influence and the power that we're doing that, but we're not asking anything about the brands in regards to how is it made, who is making this, what is the supply chain like, who is being affected, is there fair trade, fair wages, even down to chemicals. What are we doing to our planet, our environment, and our people? And it started to affect me as I would be there calling these shows and producing these shows, again, bringing all the industry together, convening these powerhouses and the influencers, and realizing the spotlight that we were putting onto these designers and encouraging people to support them and buy them, but we had no transparency on what was going on. And so now we're looking to change that with this campaign and really give a spotlight and really change behavioral support from the industry right through to the consumer. What can we do to support impact-driven brands and really make it a part of our everyday lives and wardrobe?
Thank you so much. So why is it that SAP and here the SAP House at South by Southwest are bringing this topic up? So SAP is the world's biggest software company, and most retailers in the world, they use SAP to support their business processes, supply chain, all the different processes. Most brands, most jeans, most sneaks is supported by an SAP system. So SAP have a really big voice around how you drive, produce, sell clothing with all our great SAP's customers around the world. So beginning of the year at Davos, we launched the sustainable agenda around fashion, and in New York we come together in the big fashion week in New York, and we're driving those conversations that we're now driving all over the world because it is the intersection between the brain, the designers, the retailers, the people who produce the fabric, the consumers, us, which will together be able to change the buying behavior, the behavior around how we produce clothing. And it's not going to be easy, and as we all know, it's goal number 12, responsible consumption and production, and we have until 2030, and there are some really, really big things we need to do. And that leads me to the next questions, which is really what are the relevant stakeholders should take towards meeting the SDGs? And this is really, you say, nobody can change this thing on their own. We all needed to do it together. So I want to know about what is the steps that the different stakeholders that you also represent, or what you would like to see the industry taken to change the way we do things today. And would you like to start?
Sure. So collaboration is key, right? Collaboration means power, means leverage, and means speed for change. I'm interested, especially in our space, around the supply chain and how factories and suppliers and manufacturers are basically evaluated for, their labor conditions and their social compliance. And what we'd like to see is some convergence around monitoring and evaluation of factories. When you go to a factory in Bangladesh or in India, factories ultimately, they need to respond to their customers and to the brands and retailers. They need to make money. They need to pay their workers. There are so many business drivers. And then on top of that, you've got a myriad of different brands and retailers that are forcing them to do audits and checks, which very much overlap, but yet there's so much fatigue at the factory level from having these checks and these certifications and the processes and the costs involved with certifications, which are important. So, we're working towards this in terms of our platform and in terms of working with the supplier and manufacturer and social compliance industries, but kind of convergence around standards. So we get a kind of uniform set of standards that we can work off, and so that suppliers and manufacturers are more able to focus on actually making their factories better than inviting auditors to come and check them out every day and if they're meeting those conditions. And so I guess I'm very sensitive to the pressures that the factory owner has, as well as the kind of brand and retailers. So convergence around sustainability and collaboration.
I believe there are two parts or two parties who can influence this. The one is the consumer. So the consumer needs transparency about all the processes from sourcing to sales. The other is the industry itself. The companies, the retailers, the brands, they have to come up with better solutions which on the one hand side pleases the customer experience, but also protects the environment, protects how we live today, and makes the world a little bit a better place. This is what I want to do with my company and with the services and products we offer with the help of innovative technologies to these kind of brands, to the fashion industry, so to say. And I believe and I'm convinced that with the consumers becoming younger and are going to use new technology in their day-to-day life, also for consuming goods, that these will anyway come. So maybe I'm one of the first going into that direction, but I'm sure when others also start thinking, like here, my colleague to my right, that this can be a big movement. That is, I'm a believer, so to say, in the good things on earth. Yeah.
We believe in the power and the call to action from retailers, media, and influence. The retailers, we want to just look and ask them to just stock responsibly, sell responsibly, buy better when they're doing transactions at the trade shows. Let the trade shows educate them more. What is going on? What are impact brands doing? Then when you move to the media, don't just cover an impact brand because it's Earth Month. It's all year. They should be in the wardrobes for stylists to pick. We can still mix it with fast fashion. Fast fashion's not going anywhere today, but sustainable fashion should not be isolated and alone. It needs to become a part of the conversation. It needs to be in the pages. Consumers still are buying magazines or digital or looking on their phones all the time, and beautiful imagery, photo shoots, editorial, story coverage. The media has so much power to influence and insert impact brands so that consumers can buy better. And then it moves us into influencers as their own category. People ask me, well, what is an influencer to you? I think it's all the change makers. It literally goes from policy makers through to the bloggers to people in your role when you're on the road and you're leading these conversations. And it all starts with, again, coming back to what Jacqueline's saying, collaboration is key. If the stakeholders do not collaborate, this is not going to achieve the 2030 agenda.
So let us go in and see, because we talk about fast fashion, sustainable fashion, we talk about the supply chain, we talk about the issue about waste, and this is exactly what your solutions is illustrating. So will you show the whole process about buying a pair of shoes that actually fit and how that will help not having a huge amount of waste? Will you show that?
Sure. So this is a web shop for sneakers. Today I'm going for a new running shoe. For example, the Nike Air Zoom. Usually I would go and click my size and select and buy. Now with Spot Size, you can just find out which is the best size for this sneaker. And I listen to my phone. It's actually it's on mute, but I didn't want to restart it. It tells me to measure my feet. I will do so. This is machine learning, by the way. And now it asks me to do the same from the top of my foot. And then it tells me that I shall wait a second until it gets me the right size.
Come back up for those on the live.
Okay.
You vanished.
Now it tells me that it's 37 I should go for with this sneaker. And that's how we avoid waste and additional shipping for returns. So when you think of 70% of all returns in shoes are due to size issues, I think I can contribute with Spot Size to decrease this number up to 0 if the retail industry wants to work with us. Thank you.
Woo! So just before I go to the next question, we always need a little bit about the tips and tricks to get into sustainable fashion as consumer. So you have this whole concept about renting. You rent your clothes. So talk about this.
I am an avid renter. Don't mean to plug them, but I can't help. Renttherunway.com. Every woman should check this out, whether it's for special occasions, for your daily life, or how you want to do this. I have been a member for years now, and I love being a part of the sharing economy. And not only do they make it convenient for when you're on the road or what you need, and just they give you access to so many styles, but I like that I can just have a basic capsule collection at home and not need like your self-confessed fashion hoarder. I'm a minimalist. I don't need a lot, but I do then love that as new styles are introduced, I can then rent them, use it for as much as I need, and then return it. And I haven't wasted it. I don't need to hold on to it. I don't need to throw it away. I literally put it back into this sharing economy where they think at this stage, Rent the Runway have thousands of members nationwide, and it's fantastic.
Woo! New habits, yeah. So, and that actually leads me to the next question, because what we're doing here at South by Southwest, we actually have a conversation, and it's all about conversation. It's about the media platform. It's about information. It's about insights. And so my next question is, what is the role that a media platform can do to drive this conversation in the fashion industry? And I want to add to that a little bit of a spice to that. When do we predict that we will see a big change, that we are leading into a sustainable fashion industry? So the whole thing, what will be the driver around this, both from conversations, the media platform, but also the tipping point? Would you like to go first?
Sure, yes. So, so media, communication, messaging, education, I think, is key. And so what we're excited by, what we're working on, is that, more upstream, sort of moving away from the customer, we need to educate the creative professional, the designer, the person creating the product, about the impact of their product. And they're critical stakeholders, because 80% of the environmental and social impact of a garment occurs in the design phase. That's when the designer chooses which fabric to make their dress from. Is it a silk? Is it a cotton? And therefore is predicated on where does it come from and who made it and which types of factories. And so I think that's a key piece about educating the power of the creative professional in the supply chain, together with other stakeholders like CSR and compliance. And then, of course, the other piece is, the customer, and we spoke about this morning, but then how can we also educate the customer? I mean, I think it's, I'm curious to know if the consumer understands that if they purchase something, a garment, a T-shirt, for, let's say, less than $5, are they certain that the worker making that garment is being paid a living wage? And I would say possibly not, that the worker is not being paid a living wage. And so how can we message that at the point of sale, sort of in media, so that customers can make better decisions about what they buy?
I think that it will be the customer, the consumer, looking at our future market. With 2020, the consumers will be Generation Z and Generation Y. 30% of the market will be young purchasers. And I think that nowadays we have online retailing in 20%. I have read that it will turn around and be 80% online trading in 2030. And 20% offline in the stores. And I think this time it will be the consumer having information in his hand coming from media like Instagram, whatever, blogs, etc., from their brands. They will perceive this, and they will also go for more than just a good product at the best price. I'm convinced, and I'm also a believer in the young generation, and I can already feel that they will change what the retail industry will become. And I'm really looking forward to that, and I'm sure that this will be something very disruptive in that industry, coming from the consumer.
For me, I'm a big believer that the media has so much responsibility, and it's the stories that they share, whether it's editorial to advertorial, on our phones. I mean, our world is in our palms these days, and whether we're reading stories or we're flicking through our Instagram and seeing what people are doing and sharing, there's so much that media can do to change the voice of where this is going, and also rapidly move this mission. We had Twitter with us yesterday, and it was incredible to hear from their diversity inclusion officer what they're looking to do, and the numbers that they talk about, and the speed that messaging and communication is now shared. And we need to educate the media more on how they can join this conversation and drive it. And when you ask about what does that timing look like, I think the time is now. And I think there's a lot of interesting conversations going on. What I find extremely interesting with a career in fashion is I love being in the fashion industry today. I've never seen so much collaboration in an industry that's always thrived on competition and what's next and who was first and who's hottest and what's the latest trend reveal. And now it's just all about working together. But we need to, everyone we know in the media industry needs to come forward and talk to us. Some of them don't even know what the SDGs are. They don't even realize what brands are doing for impact. Because like I went back to earlier, sometimes they just don't even ask the question.
And I love to bring in what we had in the morning session about Patagonia, who actually took a stance, and back to the media platform, like what does that really mean and how that can change people buying behavior. We had a big conversation about this.
But also, just building on that, it's about brands and retailers really sharing their core values, right? And so as customers, we have personal values too. So is there an alignment? And I think it's that convergence that is key. So Patagonia has a very strong thesis around sustainability. Their business is predicated on that. And I hope that more businesses are in the future.
So to all your point is that it's about collaboration, it's about coming together. We see the trends. But where do you see the gaps and the challenges? Why is this difficult? This intersection that we touched on before, what is it that, of course, a challenge is also an opportunity, but what is it that is going to be the tough part here?
Yeah, lots of tough things. So if I look at a kind of root cause analysis, right? So it's the buying behavior and the seasonality of retailers and brands that is causing amplifications in the supply chain and forcing may be the wrong word, but influencing a factory owner in Bangladesh to bring on more workers, not pay the correct overtime, treat women differently to the way they treat men, create opportunities for workforce harassment. That's really what's happening. So it's really the buying behavior of brands and retailers, and therefore it's the customer and the customer's decisions around that. I mean, can we switch a customer to invest in Patagonia's incredible products that have a longevity and a sustainability and a transparency, rather than buying the latest pair of jeans that Kim Kardashian has been wearing on Instagram and that a fast fashion retailer has taken about 7 days to design, manufacture, and distribute? That's really what it comes down to, and it comes back to our media messaging and our storytelling and our values, I think, as a culture and a community and as a world.
I think we have to not to do so much. It's really that I see it, at least in Germany or in Europe, that consumers are picking up on companies who do better, who not only do business but do also good and give back. And this trend shows me that when we have data and transparency and do this media awareness, that this will happen anyway. It's not anymore, as I said, enough to have a good product like the jeans from promoted by Kim Kardashian. This is not enough anymore. And here, something is happening which can be called, it's not happening very often. It's really the human race is somehow changing its attitude towards consumption. And from my perspective, it will completely change from the mass production, which is being done through Asia, and cheap labor, to a more customized purchase attitude of consumers. And this will start in a very high price segment and lifestyle segment, but will grow into the low price segments as well. And it will diminish then the mass production and fast fashion which we see today. And from my perspective, this will be maybe not punctual on 2030, maybe a little earlier, maybe a few years later, but this will come. And I think from what I can personally contribute to that is that with my products and with my values and my company, I want to show these current and future consumers that I'm already there and I have understood them. And I think if more and more companies and people do this, this will anyway happen. And I'm so happy that I'm here to speak about this, because it's something I really, really want to do with my company. I want to use technology for the good, not only for the business.
I think what we're looking at here, and it's great when you say yes, it gives us opportunities too, but I think where we're struggling right now is lack of resources and the time to make this happen. I think collaboration is going to be key. We need all the data that we can on the industry. We need all the experts to come together to share their insights, because education and communication is the only way to get this in front of everybody and quickly to achieve exactly what everyone's looking to do.
So there's definitely passion. We have seen an acceleration, I think, for a couple of years, but especially since the global goals in 2015 came out, people are more conscious about it. Could I get a small kind of prediction on when we will see some of the really, it's not 1%, 2%, 10%, but we really see a massive change? We have the whole thing about the generation, but also what the brands, the retail changing their supply chain. Are we talking 1, 2, 3 years? What are we talking? For you feel that's where the big change is coming? Would you like to start?
Gosh, that's a tough one. I would say we're excited by the way that companies are organizing themselves around sustainability, so the types of initiatives they're taking within kind of CSR. I think that there is a lot of there is collaboration. I think that we're excited by the way that companies are using and adopting technology within their supply chain for transparency, if indeed technology is just one way to get that visibility. I wouldn't want to hazard a projection per se, but I would say within the next sort of 2 to 4 years, it will be commonplace. Like when I go and meet customers and brands and retailers, you know, they're still exploring, I'd say, kind of adoption within the next kind of 2 to 4 years around technology for sustainability and tracking their supply chain. I get really scared when I meet some companies now because they cannot see behind the first tier of their supplier base. I mean, they don't know who's supplying the raw materials and the textiles and the trim and who are the dyers and where they're based. And so it's scary, but it's promising that they're taking steps towards that. So fingers crossed in the next 2 to 4 years.
Yeah, it is indeed a tough one. I will try to, somehow estimate by data I have. I read that 40% of the population in 2020 will be the generation Y and Z. And thinking 10 years ahead, when this generation will have already had a career, will be in their 40s, and will really have a big budget to spend, I think we will be there. I think they will make it. It's not me, so in the mid-40s, it will be really these guys making this change happen.
I think at the moment we're in a discovery stage. People are exploring, looking what they can do and what they can make happen. So while some things in conversation are happening now, which is great, and you're seeing brands expand and open up on their core messaging and what matters to them and their mission, I agree with Jacqueline. I think we're looking at 2 to 4, maybe even 5 years, where it's more of a norm and you're not explaining what you want to see. You just walk in and it's being shared and it's just, everyone's on the same page. I also think by that time, we're going to see a lot more adoption of what's going on. You know, obviously I refer to the SDGs, but I think just within their businesses, people are looking to make change no matter what out of the 17 goals they want to align with. And I can't wait to see what the next 2 years bring, because when you talk about the youth, I mean, the way they think, act, buy, communicate, do things, everything's at a speed of lightning compared to what my generation was doing at their age. It's incredible. And so I do think 2 to 5 years, we're going to see some incredible adoption way past the discovery stage. And then I can't wait to see at 2030 what we are sharing and the data, because that's what we're all waiting on. We're in this data collection hub right now to see what we can move forward.
Just to build on that as well, I mean, it also depends on what risk we see in the supply chain. I mean, if there is another major human tragedy like a fire in Bangladesh, or then you know, tragically, you know, that should you know, accelerate these conversations and these activities. So so I think that's key. There's just still so much risk in the supply chain, and that should kind of accelerate, you know, innovation.
So thank you so much. So I would like to sum up the session and also link to the breakfast session we had this morning. The prediction that I hear is also what we heard when we run the same session at the Fashion Week in New York. We actually believe in a very quick acceleration. There's no doubt about it that the media platform, the conversations that we are doing here at South by Southwest together with our partners, the SED Media Zone that we are doing all over the world, is very key. People need to understand the transparency the technology can give us today that we didn't have before. Today we can, with the blockchain, with all the great expensive technologies, we can actually track back, get to transparency. And we do need, whatever we are, brand or retailer, or consumer, as we all are, take responsibility and be active to do this big change. I am very optimistic. I have seen a huge acceleration, but I do believe that it's via the conversations, and as of course also a change in the way we buy things, and everybody's part of the supply chain. So thank you so much for having this very, very important conversation here Sunday morning at South by Southwest. It was an emotional morning together with an incredible crowd of people who came in, and this conversation we had here. We are here to change the world. The SDG Media Zone, if you haven't joined the sustainable fashion movement, come and join. We should also do some. We all have a role in this. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.